I gave my family, my friends and even my career for the man I loved, only to wake one morning and discover he had been secretly building anew with my best friend. Leaving me broken, humiliated and questioning if love was ever real. I was scrolling through dating apps at 2 a.m. while my wife Sarah slept next to me, our 2-year-old daughter Emma finally quiet in the next room. That's how it started. Not with some grand romantic gesture or a moment of weakness at a work conference. Just me, lying in bed next to the woman who'd given me everything, swiping right because I was bored. Sarah had just gotten back to her pre-pregnancy weight. She was working part-time as a nurse while raising Emma, exhausted most nights, falling asleep during our favorite shows. I told she didn't want me anymore. Tartar. I told a lot of lies that night. The first message came from Jessica, 26, no kids, worked in marketing. Her profile said she was looking for adventure. I was 32, married for 4 years and apparently looking for the same thing. We matched at 20:17 a.m. We were planning to meet for coffee. Just coffee, I whispered to as Sarah stirred beside me. What's the harm in coffee? 3 weeks later, I was in a hotel room downtown. Jessica's clothes scattered on the floor while my wedding ring sat on the nightstand like an accusation. She was everything Sarah wasn't in that moment: available, excited to see me, impressed by my stories about work. She laughed at my jokes. She made me feel like I was 22 again. I drove home that night with the windows down, music loud, feeling alive for the first time in months. Sarah was asleep when I got back. Emma had thrown on her crib sheets, so Sarah had changed them and was passed out on the nursery floor, still holding the dirty laundry. I stepped over her and the guilt lasted exactly 12 hours. By the next evening I was texting Jessica again. When can I see? The affair accelerated like a car with no brakes. 3 times a week became daily texts, became elaborate lies about working late. I opened a secret credit card for hotel rooms and dinners. I bought new cologne and started hitting the gym again. Sarah noticed. Of course she noticed. Seemed different, she said one morning while feeding Emma breakfast. Happy. What's going on? I looked at my daughter. Banana smeared across her face, reaching for me with sticky fingers, and felt nothing but irritation. Can't a guy be in a good mood? I snapped. Sarah flinched like I'd slapped her. That's when I knew I was gone. When the sight of my own child felt like an inconvenience. When my wife's concern felt like an interrogation instead of love. I was already living in a different world. One where Jessica and I were the main characters and everyone else was just furniture. 2 months in, Jessica started talking about us being together for real. She'd never been married, never had kids. She talked about traveling, about the apartment we could get together, about how much better her would be with someone like me. Someone established. Someone who could take care of her. What about wife? She asked one Thursday afternoon, tracing circles on my chest. What about her? I said and meant it. The plan formed slowly like ice crystals on a window. I'd ask for a divorce, split custody with Sarah, move in with Jessica. Start fresh. I was young enough to have another family if we wanted. Sarah was strong, she'd figure it out. Emma was too young to remember the disruption. Everyone would be better off. I practiced the speech for weeks. Sarah, I haven't been happy for a long time. Sarah, we've grown apart. Sarah, I think we both deserve better. Clean, simple, mature. No need to mention Jessica at all. The night I planned to do it, Sarah made my favorite dinner. She'd gotten a babysitter and we were going to have a date night at home. Something we hadn't done in months. She wore the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. The one that made her eyes look like the ocean. I have something to tell, she said as we sat down to eat. Her hands were shaking slightly. I know I've been distant, and I know things have been hard with the baby and everything. But I wanted to know. She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant again. The fork fell out of my hand. I know the timing isn't perfect, she continued, tears starting to form. But Emma will have a sibling, and maybe this is exactly what we need to bring us back together. A fresh start. I stared at her across the table, this woman who still believed in us, who still thought we could fix whatever was broken. Behind her I could see Emma's toys scattered across the living room floor, her sippy cup on the coffee table, her favorite book open to the page about the family of bears who loved each other no matter what. I'm leaving, I said. The words came out wrong, too harsh, too sudden. This wasn't how I'd practiced it. Sarah's face went completely white. What? I want a divorce. I've already talked to a lawyer. That was a lie, but it sounded more decisive, more final. Sarah just stared at me. For maybe 30 seconds, neither of us said anything. Then she started laughing, this horrible, broken sound that made my chest, relieving me. Now, when I'm pregnant and we have a toddler and I just told I want to work on us, I haven't been happy for a long time. I receded. How long? Her voice was very quiet now. What? How long have been planning this? How long have been lying to my face while I've been trying to save our marriage? I couldn't answer, the truth was too. Instead, I stood from the table and walked toward the door. There's someone else, isn't there? She called after me. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I could have denied it. I could have lied one more time, let her think this was about us growing apart instead of me throwing our family away for a 26-year-old who made me feel young. But I was tired of pretending. Yes. The sound Sarah made then isn't something I can describe. It wasn't crying or screaming. It was the sound of something breaking that can't be fixed. I walked out the door and drove straight to Jessica's apartment. She was waiting for me in lingerie and candles, ready to celebrate my freedom. We had twice that night, and afterward she talked about all the places we'd travel together, all the restaurants we'd try, all the adventures waiting for us. I didn't tell her about the second baby. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later. Sarah had hired the meanest lawyer in town, the one who'd handled her friend's messy custody battle last year, the woman who made men sign over their retirement accounts and beg for weekend visitation. I was living in a studio apartment that smelled like other people's cooking, sleeping on an air mattress while Jessica worked late most nights. She said she needed space to process my situation. Apparently dating a married man was exciting, but dating a divorced dad with child support payments was less appealing. I thought said Emma was just gonna be weekends. Jessica said when I mentioned I'd have to pick my daughter after work on Wednesday. We were supposed to go to that new sushi place she'd been talking about for weeks. The temporary custody agreement Wednesdays and every other weekend. I explained for the third time. Until we go to court. Jessica made a face like I'd suggested we adopt a rabid dog. But she's 2. What are we supposed to do with a 2-year hold? Like Emma was a problem we both had to solve instead of my daughter who I hadn't seen in 5 days. The first Wednesday pickup was brutal. Sarah answered the door looking like she'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Her eyes were swollen, her hair unwashed, and she was wearing the same yoga pants she'd had on when I left. "Daddy," Emma ran toward me, arms outstretched, and for a moment everything felt normal again. Until I saw the confusion in her face when I didn't come inside, didn't hug Sarah, didn't belong there anymore. "She's been asking where went," Sarah said quietly while Emma gathered her toys. "I told her Daddy has a new house now, but she keeps looking for in our bed in the mornings." The twisted a little deeper. "I'm sorry." Sarah looked at me directly for the first time, because seemed pretty happy with choice. I couldn't deny it. Despite the cramped apartment and the divorce lawyer fees and Jessica's growing list of complaints about my baggage, I still felt lighter free, like I'd escaped from a that was suffocating me. "I want to meet her," Sarah said suddenly. "What?" "The woman our family away for. I want to meet her." The idea terrified me, not because I was ashamed of Jessica, but because I knew exactly what Sarah would see. A girl young enough to be her little sister, with no stretch marks or exhaustion lines, who'd never changed a diaper or stayed all night with a sick child, who looked at me like I was a prize instead of a partner. That's not a good idea. I'm pregnant with second child and are living with another woman. I think I have a right to know who's going to be around my kids. Our kids. She said our kids, even though I'd already mentally checked out of the parenting equation. Even though I saw Emma 3 days a week and spent most of that time putting on cartoons while I answered work emails. 2 weeks later Sarah found Jessica's Instagram. I know because she sent me screenshots at 3 a.m. with no message, just picture after picture of Jessica in bikinis at festivals, on girls' trips to Nashville. Young, carefree, childless Jessica living the Sarah used to have before she fell in love with a man who would abandon her the second things got complicated. The final screenshot was from Jessica's story, posted just hours earlier, a photo of us at dinner, my arm around her shoulders, both of us laughing. The caption read, "Date night with my love," while my pregnant wife sat alone in our house, probably listening to Emma cry for a daddy who was too busy playing bachelor to care. My phone rang immediately. "Really?" Sarah's voice was raw. "Her posting couple photos while I'm raising daughter alone and growing second child." I didn't post anything. That was Jessica. "Oh well, that makes it so much better. Girlfriend is advertising relationship while I can't even tell Emma why daddy doesn't live here anymore." The line went quiet. I could hear Emma babbling in the background, probably awake because Sarah's crying had woken her. "I'm not letting see Emma until decide what kind of father want to be," Sarah said finally, "and I'm going back to court to make sure don't get unsupervised visits until after the baby comes." She hung before I could respond. I should have driven over there immediately. Should have banged on the door until she let me explain. Should have begged for another chance to prove I could be the dad Emma deserved. Instead I told Jessica what happened, and she said maybe it was for the best. "Kids complicate everything," she said, curled against me on my air mattress. "Now we can focus on us." 6 weeks later, Sarah gave birth to our son Michael, during what should have been my custody weekend. I found out from her sister's Facebook post a photo of Sarah in a hospital bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a perfect little boy with my nose in her eyes. Emma was in the picture too, kissing her baby brother's forehead like she was already the best big sister in the world. I wasn't in any of the photos. I stared at that post for an hour sitting in Jessica's apartment while she got ready for brunch with her friends. Here was my son, born into the world, and I was finding out about the same ways her high school acquaintances and distant cousins. "Okay." Jessica called from the bathroom where she was doing her makeup. Sarah had the baby. Jessica appeared in the doorway, mascara wand in hand. "Is it yours?" The question hit me like a physical. Of course he was mine. Sarah wasn't like me. Sarah didn't lie and sneak around and destroy families for fun. Sarah was loyal and honest in everything I'd thrown away because I thought I deserved more excitement. "Yes, he's mine." "Well, congratulations I guess." Jessica went back to her makeup. "Are still coming to brunch, everyone's excited to meet by." I looked at the Facebook photo again. Michael was maybe 6 hours old, tiny and perfect and completely unaware that his father was a selfish monster who'd chosen another woman over his family. Emma was wearing a big sister shirt that Sarah must have bought weeks ago, planning for this moment when we'd all be together to welcome the new baby. "I need to go to the hospital," I said. Jessica's face appeared in the mirror, eyebrows raised. "No, but we have plans. My son was just born, ex-wife's son." The correction felt like a, because that's what I'd made him, wasn't it? Sarah's son instead of our son. Another person in the world who would grow knowing his father chose someone else over his family. I drove to the hospital alone. Jessica said she'd meet me at brunch afterward if I got this sorted out quickly. The maternity ward felt like walking through someone else's dream. Happy families everywhere, grandparents holding balloons, fathers pacing nervously with coffee and flowers. I didn't belong there anymore. Sarah's room was at the end of the hall. Through the window I could see her sitting in bed, nursing the baby while Emma played with dolls in the chair beside her. They looked like a perfect little family, complete with I knocked softly. Sarah looked, and her face went through a dozen emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, anger, sadness, resignation. Came, "I'm his father." She was quiet for a moment, adjusting the baby's position. "Air." The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma looked from her dolls and saw me standing in the doorway. "Daddy, come see baby Michael." I stepped into the room, and Emma launched herself at my legs. She felt smaller than I remembered, like she'd been shrinking every day I wasn't there to notice. "He's so little," she whispered, pulling me toward the bed. "And he makes funny noises when he sleeps." I looked down at my son for the first time. He was perfect in that way newborns are, all potential and possibility. His tiny fingers were curled into fists and his hair stuck at odd angles just like mine did. "Can I hold him?" I asked Sarah. She hesitated for so long I thought she'd say no. Then she carefully transferred him to my arms, and I was holding my son, feeling his weight and warmth and the impossible softness of brand new skin. "Hi Michael," I whispered. "I'm Dad." He opened his eyes for just a second, unfocused but looking right at me, and I felt something open in my chest. This overwhelming love mixed with the most profound regret I'd ever experienced. Because I'd already missed his birth, missed his first night, missed the moment Sarah needed me most. And I could never get that back. Where's girlfriend? Sarah asked quietly. At brunch. Sarah just nodded, like this confirmed everything she'd suspected about my priorities. I stayed for 20 minutes, holding Michael while Emma told me about all the things she'd been doing since I saw her last. Preschool, and helping mommy get ready for the baby, and learning to write her name. A whole happening without being reported like news from a foreign country. When I finally handed Michael back to Sarah, she looked at me with eyes that used to see everything good in me and now just saw the truth. Can see them, she said. But not at my house, and not with her around, and if disappoint Emma one more time, if promise to show and then don't, we're done completely. Do understand me? I nodded because what else could I do? On the drive back to Jessica's apartment, I called my mom to tell her about Michael. She'd been asking about the baby for weeks, trying to figure out how to be a grandmother in this impossible situation I'd created. How's Sarah doing? Mom asked after I described Michael's 10 fingers and 10 toes. She's strong. She shouldn't have to be strong right now. She should have her husband there, taking care of her and Emma while she recovers. That's what family does. The judgment in her voice was clear. My own mother, who'd raised me to believe in commitment and responsibility, was ashamed of the man I'd become. I think I made a mistake. I think made a choice. Mom corrected. And choices have consequences. That beautiful little boy is going to grow wondering why his father wasn't there when he was born. Emma's going to remember that daddy had somewhere more important to be than with his new baby brother. Those are consequences he'll live with forever. She was right, of course. But by the time I got back to Jessica's apartment, I was already telling it was too late to change anything now. I'd made my choice and I had to live with it. Jessica was back from brunch, slightly tipsy and full of stories about her friends' reactions to meeting me. They all think her so mature. She laughed, wrapping her arms around my neck. And they're so jealous that I found someone established who can actually take me places. Someone established, someone who could take care of her. Not someone she loved for who he was, but someone she loved for what he could provide. The realization should have bothered me more than it did. That night I dreamed about Michael. In the dream, he was older, maybe Emma's age, and he was asking me why I left before he was born. Why I chose a stranger over his family. Why I didn't love him enough to stay. I woke in a cold sweat reaching for my phone to call Sarah. To beg her to let me come back, to try again to be the father and husband they deserved. But Jessica was sleeping next to me, beautiful and uncomplicated and nothing like the I'd run away from. And in the gray morning light, it was easier to convince that I'd made the right choice. That everyone would be better off this way. I was about to learn exactly how wrong I was. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was getting ready for work. Jessica had already left for some marketing conference in Atlanta, and I was alone in her apartment, trying to figure out if I owned enough clean shirts to make it through the week. Mr. Thompson. This is Dr. Martinez at Children's Hospital and my turn to ice is at Emma. Is she okay? Emma is stable now, but she was brought in last night with severe dehydration and a high fever. She'd been asking for. I'm calling because wife listed as the emergency contact and ex-wife. I should have corrected him, but the words wouldn't come. What happened? It appears she caught a stomach bug, but because she was so distressed about missing, she stopped eating and drinking properly. Combined with the illness, it created a dangerous situation. She's going to be fine, but she'll need to stay for observation. I was already grabbing my keys. I'm on my way, Mr. Thompson. Wife is exhausted. She's been here all night with the baby and Emma, handling this alone. Maybe bring coffee. The judgment in his voice was unmistakable. Another person who could see exactly what kind of man I was. The pediatric wing smelled like disinfectant and fear. I found Sarah in the family waiting area, Michael sleeping in a car seat beside her while she stared blankly at a muted TV. She looked like she'd aged another 5 years since the hospital visit 2 months ago. How is she? Sarah didn't look at me. She kept crying for her daddy while she was throwing. Kept saying would make her feel better if we're there. I had to explain to the nurses why her father wasn't answering his phone at midnight. On my phone. I turned it off because Jessica wanted uninterrupted couple time before her business trip. We'd had and watched movies and made love twice while my daughter was in the emergency room, asking for me. I'm here now. Now she's sedated and sleeping. Missed the part where she needed pun. I sat down beside Sarah, careful not to get too close. Michael stirred in his car seat and I could see he'd grown already. More hair, longer fingers, alert eyes that tracked movement. Another milestone I was missing. The divorce is final next week, Sarah said suddenly. I know. Emma starts therapy on Thursday. The child psychologist says she's showing signs of abandonment anxiety. She hoards food in her room because she's afraid I might leave too. She wakes crying almost every night. Each word was a between my ribs. Maybe if I could see her more consistently. We canceled 4 of last 6 visits. Jessica doesn't like having a toddler around, so I've chosen her comfort over daughter's stability. Don't pretend this is about scheduling. That she was right. Jessica had made it clear that she didn't sign for stepmother duties. And I'd been taking the path of least resistance ever since. It was easier to disappoint Emma than to with Jessica about why my daughter needed to come first sometimes. Things will be different after the divorce is final, I said, the lie tasting bitter in my mouth. Sarah laughed that broken sound again. Will they? Because Jessica's pregnant, the world stopped spinning. What? She posted about it yesterday. A cute little announcement, ultrasound photos and everything. Our little miracle is coming this fall. Very sweet. Emma saw it when she was playing with my phone and asked me why daddy was having a baby with the pretty lady instead of us. I felt sick. Jessica hadn't told me. We'd talked about waiting until my divorce was settled, and my was less complicated. But she'd been tracking her cycle, talking about how natural it would be for us to have children together. How much better she'd be as a mother than women who let themselves go after having kids. I have to go, I said, standing too quickly. Emma's in room 314 when she wakes. Try not to disappoint her again. I drove straight to the Atlanta hotel where Jessica's conference was being held. 3 hours of interstate. My mind racing through every conversation we'd had about kids. Every time she'd said she wasn't ready. Every time I'd assured Sarah that Jessica had no interest in being a mother. I found her in the hotel bar with her coworkers, glowing and radiant, one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. She was telling the story of how we met, painting it as a romantic comedy instead of the destruction of a marriage. Jake. She jumped in me, and I could smell on her breath. What are doing here? I thought had Emma this week. Emma's in the hospital. Jessica's face fell, but not with concern, with annoyance. Is she okay? Because I can't leave the conference. This is important for my career. She's fine. We need to talk. I pulled her away from her coworkers, into the hotel lobby where conversations echoed off marble floors and chandeliers. Everything was too bright, too clean, too different from the pediatric ward where my daughter lay connected to IVs. Why didn't tell me we're pregnant? Jessica's hand went immediately to her stomach. I wanted to surprise. I know things have been stressful with the divorce and everything, but this is good news. This is us starting our real together. My daughter's in the hospital asking for me while I'm here talking to about surprise pregnancy. Our surprise pregnancy, she corrected, and said Emma was fine. The casual way she dismissed my daughter's crisis told me everything I needed to know about our future. This woman who I'd thrown away my family for saw my children as obstacles to the she wanted with me. I can't do this, I said. Do what? Any of it. This, another baby while I can barely handle being a father to the kids I already have. Jessica's face went white then red. Can't be serious. Left wife for me. We're having a baby together. Don't get to just change mind because things are complicated. I left my wife because I was selfish and then thought the grass was greener somewhere else. But I can't keep making the same mistakes. So what? We're going back to Sarah, with her saggy body and her needy kids and her boring. The cruel words hung between us like gas. This was what Jessica really thought of the woman who'd loved me, the children who needed me, the I'd destroyed. This was who I'd chosen over my family. Sarah doesn't want me back, but maybe I can still be a decent father to Emma and Michael. What about our baby? The question hit me like a freight train. Because I was about to do the exact same thing to this child that I'd done to Michael. Abandon them before they were even born. Choose something else over their family. But I couldn't pretend anymore that Jessica and I were building something real. We were two selfish people who'd fallen into bed together and confused for love. And now there was going to be another child in the world whose father couldn't get his priorities straight. I'll pay child support, I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. And I'll see the baby. But I can't marry Jessica. I can't pretend we're a family when I'm still learning how to be a father to the kids I already failed. Jessica stared at me for a long moment, her hand still pressed to her stomach. When she spoke, her voice was ice cold. Her pathetic know that, away a good woman and two kids for me and now throwing me away too. Don't deserve any of us. She was absolutely right. The drive back to the hospital felt like swimming through molasses. Every mile marker reminded me of another terrible decision, another moment when I'd chosen over the people who needed me. Emma was awake when I got to her room, picking at hospital jello while Sarah fed Michael a bottle in the corner chair. Daddy, she reached for me with arms still connected to an IV, and I lifted her carefully, pressing my face into her hair that smelled like disinfectant and tears. I'm sorry I wasn't here, baby girl. I'm so sorry. I was scared, she whispered. And my tummy and I wanted to read me stories. I know, I shall read to me now. I looked at Sarah, who nodded toward a pile of picture books on the bedside table. For the next hour I read every book twice while Emma curled against my chest, finally relaxed for the first time in weeks. Michael fell asleep in Sarah's arms, and for a few minutes, we looked almost like a family again. But families don't exist in hospital rooms. They exist in daily choices and showing, in putting other people first even when it's inconvenient or boring or hard. And I'd failed that test over and over again. When Emma fell asleep, I carefully tucked her back into the hospital bed in her forehead. I'm gonna do better, told Sarah quietly. I know I don't deserve another chance, but Emma and Michael do deserve a father who shows. Sarah studied my face for a long moment. Jessica broke with, didn't she? There was no point lying. She's pregnant. Sarah's expression didn't change. She'd moved past the point where my betrayals could still hurt. Now she was just calculating the impact on her children. So'll be a part-time father to 3 kids instead of 2. I don't know yet. But I want to try to get Emma and Michael right first. Can try. Sarah said, standing with Michael still sleeping against her shoulder. But trying isn't enough anymore. Emma needs consistency. Michael needs a father who's present. And I need to know that are not going to disappear again the minute something more interesting comes along. She was asking for a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Because I'd already proven that when things got hard or boring or repetitive, I looked for an exit. I'd done it to my marriage, to my family, and now to Jessica and our unborn child. 3 months later I was living alone in a different apartment, paying child support to 2 different women, seeing my kids according to a court-mandated schedule that treated me like the flight risk I'd proven to be. Emma was slowly getting better in therapy, but she still flinched when I said goodbye, still asked if I was coming back. Michael was walking now, taking his first steps while I was at work, saying his first words to Sarah while I was spending my court-ordered time with Emma. I was missing everything that mattered because I'd spent so long chasing things that didn't. The worst part wasn't the loneliness or the financial stress or even the guilt. The worst part was realizing that I'd had everything I ever needed right from the beginning, and I'd thrown it away because I thought I deserved more than love, more than family, more than a woman who would give me children and build a with me and never ask for anything but faithfulness in return. Jessica's baby was born on a Tuesday in October, a little girl with my eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Jessica sent me one photo and a birth certificate that needed my signature, no invitation to meet my daughter, no discussion of custody or visitation. Just paperwork and a tiny face that looked like Emma's did as a newborn. I have 3 children now, and I'm a stranger to all of them in different ways. Emma knows me but doesn't trust me. Michael sees me twice a week and calls me by my first name. And my youngest daughter, Sophia, will grow hearing stories about the father who walked away from her family before she was even born. Some nights I lie awake thinking about the moment I opened that dating app, instead of talking to Sarah about what was wrong in our marriage. About the first time I chose Jessica's excitement over Emma's bedtime story. About all the sliding door moments where I could have chosen differently and saved everyone the heartbreak. But mostly I think about what my mother said in the hospital that day: choices have consequences, and the consequence of choosing over everyone else is that now I'm all I have left. The man who wanted everything ended with nothing worth having. And the worst part is knowing I did it all to